We are live, sharing my screen with the audio, and let's kick it off. Alrighty, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Texas Soccer Live, episode 38 to be precise. And if you notice any differences, there is a difference. For the first time in our 38 episodes and now 3.5 years, it is a duo that you haven't seen before. It's just myself, Sean Tellez, with Richard Romero in the house. Our boy Raul couldn't be with us this evening, so his unbeaten streak, his perfect attendance record has been shattered. And Richard is going to be taking up and picking up the slack, I'm sure. So, Richard, man, how you doing this evening? How you doing?
Hey, Sean, how's it going? Thanks so much again. It's good for us to be back here with another episode. It is very unfortunate, 37 episodes with Raul coming streak. But, you know, something that this era has proved to us is the fact that it's very unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's good for us to, even though we're not close together, to still be able to host this show on the virtual platforms, right? So it's good to be back. I'm doing well. Started a new job, handling some stuff over on campus with the organizations I'm part of.
Nice.
So I'm handling a lot of stuff, still with the taqueria with my family, which you actually came by and tried it out last month.
I did. Superb tacos. I had the El Pastor, had some shrimp tacos as well. Your dad was cooking it up, and it was definitely bomb, man.
Yeah, so my family opened up a taqueria over on the south side of Houston. It's called Texy Taco. You can follow them at Texy Taco on Instagram and Facebook. So definitely check it out. And let me know when you go there. Maybe you can get a small discount.
Hey. Yeah, definitely check it out if you're on the south side, man, of Houston. Definitely worth a good bite to eat. So shout out to Texy Taco. That's a good joint. So, yeah, man, I also want to start off before we get going. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. We're now a few days in. So glad to be celebrating that. And obviously the beautiful game, soccer, football is such a big part of Hispanic and Latino culture that it's awesome. It's awesome to be celebrating that. And so I'm looking forward to a month of festivities, and in my neck of woods in the school we'll be doing lots of planning a big event coming up towards the end of it in October. So looking forward to Carnaval, which is going to celebrate that. Well, hey, let's jump in. If you guys are watching this on playback, we have 4 kind of big topics tonight. We're kind of switched it up. We are going to jump in with the MLS and your Houston Dynamo, who are finally making some noise. That's topic number 1. Number 2, we're going to hop over to Europe. Soccer was just barely over. It's back again in Europe, and the last of the 5 major leagues will kick into action this weekend. We'll also be talking about, before that, we'll be talking about the NWSL. We'll talk about a little women's soccer here stateside. And then finally, we'll take it over to Mexico and Liga MX, which is the typical dogfight that we all love because it's anybody's game still, even though we're going into week 11 and there's still plenty of fight in these last final games to get into the playoffs. So once again, make sure you like, comment, share, follow us if you're not already on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube for the episodes. Comment. We want to see your comments. We want to engage with you. So definitely comment on topics as we go through or tell us what you want to hear. So, all right, man, let's jump in. Number 1, the MLS at first. I want to talk about just in general, and I'm going to put up the rankings here. So they since they've come back, we talked about last show, the original plan was to phase in games. So we had 6 games of no fans. We're now about to enter a phase of 3 games with some fans, and then potentially a whole nother 9 games for a total of 18 after the bubble. I can tell you right now, I have inside information because my dad does security and stuff for the Dynamo. They've already planned the games beyond these 3, so it's going to happen. But if you look at it right now, I'm putting up the East rankings, and I want to kind of just summarize that for the people and get any takeaways you have on that, Richard. But let's talk about the East just because it's the bigger of the 2 conferences. And the Dynamo aren't in it. But interesting that there's some definitely strong contenders. The best team in the league right now is actually the Columbus Crew with 24 points. Philadelphia is right behind them with 21. Toronto with 21. Orlando with 19. And then it kind of drops off. Shocker for me, man, and I'm curious as what your take is overall on that. You notice that I marked in number 10, Atlanta. They still have not recovered from that miserable showing down in Orlando. That's one of the big stories for me. And the other big story, like I said, has to be the Columbus Crew because they've continued the success from the bubble. Any thoughts on what we got going on in the East in the MLS?
For sure, man. I mean, like you said, it is surprising to see that in the table when you're comparing it to last year. But again, with the unpredictability that the world of sports has undergone during the pandemic, it's something that you necessarily like. There is no like formula to explain what's going on here. I think this is raw football, right? What's going on? This is something that like I would treat it as like what we used to play in like high school and just outside. Like this is just you between the other team. It has nothing to do with the fans. It has nothing to do with the management team. This is a sport that you get to play, and you get to play it with your teammates. And at the end of the day, that's what's really mattering. Which is why, again, also the points are so close. At least like from the first couple of teams, and then you get down, and all of that is pretty even.
Well, I mean, do you think starting, because we're going to see starting, I think tomorrow actually with games around the league, you're going to start seeing stadiums at 25%. Do you think the added fans are going to start making any sort of difference, or do you think it's still too early and still too few to make an impact?
I mean, honestly, like there's teams who've had this amount of people show up to games, so
true.
So it does play an advantage depending on how heavy that fan base is, and there's teams who've built that fan base and know that they're counting on that whether they're in the field or not. I mean, part of the reason why I would also say Columbus has an amazing fan base who supported them through the whole change of them. I think they were going to be relegated or were going to be extinguished from the league, right?
Well, they were this close to becoming, what is now Austin FC. Before they got the approval to get Austin FC, the ownership team in Austin was about to buy them and make them Austin FC. So they narrowly 2 years ago, they were on the cusp of being sold out of town. And so here they are, number 1 in the East and actually number 1 in the league. I'll switch over to the West now. The other thing for me that I like to I notice is the consistency that you see in teams like Toronto, both the New York squads, are staying pretty consistent. So pretty steady pace in the East. It's not the Atlanta's the big shocker for me. Switching gears over to the West. This one we'll get into the Dynamo, but I find it very interesting. We have Sporting KC out there first place with 20 points. I will add that 2 of the Dynamo's last wins were against Sporting KC. So I don't think rank really means as much in the West because you can knock off anybody. Right. Next, you got Seattle. You got Minnesota, Joe's favorite team. Dallas, the LA teams always with each other. Portland, and then then right now, currently 1 spot out of the playoffs, but we're right there is Houston with 14 points. Houston aside, looking at the rest of the West, because we'll get into the Dynamo in a second. What stands out to you out of the group that we're seeing in the West right now?
I mean, I'm sure some of the FC Dallas fans are probably going to get me, but FC Dallas, a surprise to see them up there, like in the top 4, as well as Sporting KC. I mean, sure they brought Alan Pulido up to Sporting KC, and I think also another former player from Tigres is playing there too, or he might be the one in Columbus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those are my 2 surprises, and like you said, like it really doesn't mean that much. I'd also like to know like how much of an impact did the tournament, because remember those teams, the points that you racked up from there are also influencing the rankings here too.
Right. Well, I find it interesting. Dallas, who didn't even play in the tournament, who got knocked out because of COVID, is in 4th place. And yes, that was a bitter pill. We'll talk about that here in a second. But our Houston Dynamo, their only loss since the tournament has been the most recent game, 2-1 to Dallas. I also look at goal differential, and what I've noticed the last I watched the most recent Seattle game. Seattle, to me, I think is heads and tails above Sporting KC. I think the rankings are deceiving because when I look at one of the things I always pay attention to is goal differential, and Seattle's at plus 13, which is only second in the entire league to Columbus, who has a plus 14. And so Seattle's a scoring machine, and I really think that there's no doubt that they're going to end up. I think they're solid in that top 3. Minnesota has been impressive to me, being consistent and staying where they're at. The underperformers, once again, LA, both LA teams underperforming. I think Galaxy more so. I don't think it's panic time yet for LAFC, but it is interesting. They've been kind of sluggish coming back from their tournament. And I'm also go ahead.
Yeah, and another thing you could notice, the fact that the first couple of games were played within their region. So obviously you had the LAs face off against each other. You had Seattle play against LAFC and Portland, which are all the strong teams from the West from like the last year. Real Salt Lake, who was in the final. San Jose, they're not the greatest team, which is why they got beaten 7-1. But still, like that also plays an influence based on your region, who you got to play in the first round of matches.
Well, I also we're almost seeing a little bit of a Liga MX vibe in both these conferences in the sense of the standings. They're all very close still. I know we still have a lot of games to play, but it's really anybody's game. I mean, talk about the Dynamo here is sitting at 8. They were just a couple games ago, they were as high as 5. And so, these guys are moving in and out. And so it's a tight race, which is I'd like. This is what makes soccer entertaining. This is the sort of stuff that the MLS actually needs. So maybe at the end of the day, the silver lining is that all this mess, all this crap, maybe we even, not completely, but we tried to smooth out the playing field a little bit in the sense that I feel like it's more competitive now than it would be had it been just a normal season. I don't know how to describe it, but that's kind of what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we expected from the league, something that the MLS has always been criticized for. I would say abroad, when I heard it back in Europe, it's like the fact that like MLS doesn't seem as competitive, and this is proving that wrong. Like essentially anybody could jump off to the top 8 in any given week or two.
Yeah. I think this is a huge opportunity, and we'll kind of segue in. You talk about getting to the top 8 and getting up ultimately into a playoff contention. I think it's a huge opportunity for the Dynamo coming from that being in the basement, literally, and Tab Ramos' system starting to actually develop and take shape. It's a huge opportunity that I think that now I want to be cautious because it's the story of Houston sports fans. We get really excited, then we get let down. But I see an opportunity here for the Dynamo to actually, at least, I think just them getting into the playoffs, period, and being competitive in a playoff match would be a huge step forward, considering where they've been for the last almost 2 years now.
Right.
Looking at the most recent results coming up, they opened up with a 0-0 tie to Dallas. But then an explosion, 5-2 against Sporting KC. Quintero, I think, in there with the brace. A 3-0 win over Minnesota. So once again, two top West teams. A 2-1 win again over Sporting KC. A recent 1-1 tie versus Colorado. And then, of course, the letdown this past weekend, 1-2 to Dallas. But that game, honestly, I saw a lot of fatigue. And what's nice about this is going into this next run, they've had a lot more rest. There's been some roster moves, which I want to get into. I'm just pulling up here. Joe commented, is it competitive because of the U.S.'s approach to youth academies and training, or from outscoring and bringing in players from outside the U.S.? Joe, yeah, it's a good point. I mean, we bring that up a lot on this show. I think it's a combination of both. I mean, the reason you're seeing the Dynamo succeed is that they're doing both. I'm about to talk about their signings, but they brought in Tab Ramos, the guy known to be in the youth system in the U.S. at the national level, and he's bringing youth, several notable American youths, into the system. At the same time, he's not turning away from the international scene. We just signed a 21-year-old Argentinian today. Breaking news if you didn't hear that. I'm about to get into that. But brought in Ariel Lassiter, from the Costa Rican side. And so it's both. And so the answer, Joe, is obviously to build a solid academy system. That's your ultimate goal. That's what makes your league last forever. That's why La Liga, right, is so great in the Premier League. But in the meantime, you can't pass up on great international talent. What's your thoughts on that, Richard?
No, I agree. But I would like to note that it's not necessarily the U.S. Soccer Federation doing this.
Right.
It's more of the MLS creating a youth system now, where I think it's independent from both, where these are youth players who are literally like in a different league of their own. Like there's still no consistency into how they're being filtered into the MLS. But I do agree with what you said in terms of it being necessary to do both. Will it ever be integrated? I mean, in the U.S., it's really difficult because that's not something traditional to all the other sports leagues. Right? Everything is its own separate entity.
Well, I'll tell you this, though. I'm excited about, speaking of youth and whatnot, I am excited that Tab Ramos has stuck to his guns with the youth. We've seen the roster moves lately. I think on the last show we commented on a young rising individual, Ian Hoffman, who we've signed, who will start playing in 21, but is a rising star amongst the U.S. soccer system. We brought in Ariel Lassiter, who's playing for a Costa Rican side, previously played with LA Galaxy for a few games. He, in his debut, had a brace against Sporting KC. And we all of a sudden found ourselves with a loaded top with Manotas, with Ellis, with Christian Ramirez, with now Lassiter, Quintero. What do you do with all this? Memo Rodriguez, who's playing midfield but scoring. And finally, we saw a move pulled. The question is, who is it going to be? And I think it worked out for everyone. Albert Ellis had a great run here with the Dynamo. He wanted to play in Europe. Looking at now what we got in return, which was money, and now knowing that ultimately, a lot of people criticized it at first because all we got was money. There was nothing else there. You got to understand how soccer works. It was all about the next move. It wasn't about that move. So today was the next move. And I want to make sure I get his name right. I know his first name is Mateo, but I always have times Bahamich is his name. So Mateo Bahamich, who's a 21-year-old Argentinian. He played for Instituto, which is a second division Argentinian team with a pretty proud history, with some notable players to come out of there. He's only 21. We got him on a four-year deal. We have 80% of his rights. He slides right into the international designated spot that Elise had vacated. So that was the move. And I love seeing this vision because previous Dynamo teams, I felt like would have made the move for Elise. I'm like, hey, yay, we got money. And then we do nothing. It was immediately followed with a move that they had been working on for weeks. I'm finally seeing a plan. I mean, well, I don't know what are your thoughts on some of the recent moves and what Tab Ramos is doing?
Nah, man, I'm laughing because this is exactly what your rant was about last year. This time last year, like there isn't anything being done, and I mean, Tab Ramos, like you said, is sticking to his word.
Yeah.
So I think there's nothing that we can't like. This is something that like I guess we're not used to. It's like just waiting for things to happen. Like Tab Ramos does have this vision. The Dynamo leadership team is just gonna need to trust them to just execute it and perform it. It's not something that is gonna pay out like right now, but it's gonna pay out in the upcoming months. Maybe not even at the beginning of this tournament, but who knows, right?
Well, and also you're forming a new core. You're flipping it to where you have the average age has dropped. I feel like I need to look at the math, but I think the average roster age has dropped by like 5 years
Yeah.
at least because and at least was young. People forget that he wasn't that old, but all these guys, we're talking the number. I think the average age now on the roster is now hovering around 21 and 22. It's much younger with other guys going out. So I think that's huge because he's lining up a group of guys who can develop. I'm telling you, it's not going to be 21. I think we'll see some huge progressions next season. Watch out for 22. I'm telling you right now, you heard it live, Texas Soccer Live tonight. 2 years from now, watch it because if he's allowed to stay there, then we'll have something going.
Right.
Now, speaking of being able to stay there, that involves ownership. And there's been a lot of interesting news recently that came out with Houston Dynamo involving ownership and a potential rebrand. Yes, you heard it right, a rebrand. It all started with Brenner saying that Gabriel said, I'm thinking about selling my majority ownership in the Dynamo. And which I'm telling you right now, Dynamo fans everywhere are cheering because get this idiot out of here, get someone who's going to spend money in a better way. Yeah, it was followed up by the marketing side floating out the idea that if there was a change in ownership, there might be a rebranding to go along with the ownership. And I'll let you talk about in a second, the 15 years. And they threw out there, including possibly changing the team colors, the team name, and the team crest. Now, I'm going to get your inside input and says, but needless to say, and I'll talk more about it, the fans are not happy with that, even suggesting some of that. So the reason I'd say those of you who are new viewers, if you're not aware, Richard had the opportunity and actually interned with the Dynamo not too long ago, specifically in marketing and in looking at image and whatnot. And so I really want to hear your take on what we're seeing going on here and if you think it's actually a good idea.
Okay, so yes, that was a nice segue. I mean, for me, like I am a designer. I am definitely very involved in marketing, and I did get a chance to intern last year with the Dynamo. And I guess one of the conversations happening was the fact that we are celebrating our 15-year season next year. And I mean, this idea had been floating around for a while on like what would need to get done in terms of the rebranding side. Definitely, this is like nothing. I think it has nothing to do with the sports side of things. I do think as a designer, like we are in need of a rebrand. Like all the teams are changing their logos and their names. Whether or not they should do it, I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be their decision. Last year, the Rockets ended up changing one of their logos, and people were so upset about it. Yet they still did it, you know.
Yeah.
So at least for me, like I think we are in need of a rebrand. We had a chance to talk about this earlier. Something I don't want to see go away, and like you mentioned, it was the Dynamo. Like that stands us out outside of it being Houston. It's Houston Dynamo. Um, whether how do we rework that into a new logo or with new colors? Again, like we're a space city. Like that energy always identifies us. So how to steer away from that? I don't see that. How to create it into a visual icon? That's where I see a full potential, and maybe that's where the team is focusing. And like Joe's saying, like change it all, right? There's people who love it, there's people who hate it, right? But I think in terms of the name, it sticks. There's already a fan base, you know, that like shouts the name. It gives us our own identity. That I guess when you talk about fans, you're stripping that away from them.
Yeah.
I actually had the opportunity to talk about this with a professor like 2 years ago, and that's something important. You can't forget about the fan base. because they essentially are the ones who built that crest and that name for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not the extremist like Joe is here, but I do agree there needs to be a change or refreshing of things. Now, in order of preference, in terms of the crest and actual logo itself, do whatever the heck you want with that. I don't care. I don't care with the actual logo, the crest. Do what you want with that. I mean, change that. Change your mascot. Take Diesel out back and shoot him. I don't care, and get a new mascot. I don't care about that stupid fox. Okay, but what I'm non-negotiable on. Number one, actually, my priority is not even the name. It's the colors, because I love the fact when they chose orange when they came to Houston. That is, you don't see orange a lot in the soccer world. I mean, other than you think about like the Netherlands, right, as a national team, and a few other squads in the world. Orange is unique, and I want to keep those colors. As you said, the name. For the love of God, we have too many SCs and FCs. We need Houston SC, Houston FC. Shoot me now, all right? That is so just lame, and I swear if we end up with having just some generic colors, we're gonna be red, white, and blue now, and it's gonna be the Texas Soccer FC, and unless they want to take our naming rights and call it Texas Soccer Live FC, then I'm not cool with it. And it's just Joe says, what is it? Name is good, but colors and mascot, where were they at? The colors are great, Joe. I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Orange is great, but the mascot, Diesel, shoot the fox. Shoot the fox. I don't care. All right. It's just, I don't see the need right now. I get the whole 15 years, and I get the whole, but we're in such an odd year, and it's 2020, and why are we talking about this right now? Your team is finally playing good, and what are you doing? You're pissing off the fans by talking about a rebrand. Like, you finally have people happy about you, and you want to talk about rebrand. Oh, for crying out loud, that's not the time to talk about it. I mean, I don't know who's pulling the strings up there. I don't know if it is coming from ownership or if marketing's gone rogue and is doing their own thing. I don't know. But someone please get a hold of the ship and say, you know what? For now, it's a weird season. We're actually doing good. Let's trust in Tab, shut our mouths, and we'll talk about this in the offseason. Because you're not gonna do any of that rebranding stuff until the offseason anyway.
Exactly.
So they're just floating it out there, and it's making a lot of people annoyed, myself included. And it's like, just stop with that. I also found interesting, they're letting the fans and like all the other teams, but only in the upper bowl, and all these stuff. And I'm just like, as you said, you kind of made a joke or reference. The Dynamo are used to having 25% capacity, so this shouldn't be new. But it's unfortunate that that you can't see more, because this is actually something I would like to see in person in terms of where this team has been. Upcoming for them, just real quick, and then if you have any closing thoughts on them before we move on. They do have a next series of games. They have Minnesota here in town on the 19th. On Saturday, they go on the road against Chicago, and they finally get to play the new team in the league, Nashville SC. So that's your Houston Dynamo next 3. I can tell you right now, there'll be more games after that. They've already planned it. Okay,
For sure.
MLS. So,
and that's the thing. It's like a lot of this stuff happens behind the scenes. It's just like you said, it's poorly timed. And when they decided to announce this, like this has been on the worst. I would dare to say before I even started interning there. So the fact that like they just decided to come out with this now, like who knows? I don't know why, because I don't work there anymore. But still, like,
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Before we switch gears and get out of the USA, let's hit on. There's a little bit of stuff going on. NWSL already it started back up with the fall series. We saw the Dash have their first game in that. Quite the shootout. Going down, what was it, 3-4 to North Carolina.
Right.
And so most teams have only played a game. There's 4 teams that haven't even played yet. You notice the upcoming schedule. We'll see the Dash again in action, not this weekend, but the following weekend against Orlando. The games are really spread out. I'm just kind of curious. I know you follow NWSL a little closer than I do, but kind of what are your 2 things? A, just thoughts overall on them starting up and playing some more games in the fall. and then B, just about what you thought about the Dash coming out, hot off the trophy, trophy win in the tournament, coming out against North Carolina with that 3-4 loss.
Right. I mean, I'm definitely excited to see them play. I think when we last talked on the show here, it was like we didn't know whether they were going to have another season. I kind of like thought that they were going to be like done for the year, but no, like
Right.
again, like they're also hungry. They also want to keep playing. And the fact that their season got cut short doesn't like excuse the fact that they shouldn't play. So I'm really glad that they started it back up. And as you can see, they're being more strategic on spreading it out again because they also have less teams, which speaking to small teams, like now Orlando's back. Orlando Pride is back in the mix for matches. So that's good to know that all the 9 teams are back. You know, uh, as far as the match with the Dash and the Courage, like for me, that was the game I was looking forward to because you had the 2019 champs versus the 2020 champs. So I think the fact that it was a 3-4 close match again just speaks to the quality of both teams. The Dash have really improved from when they started. Now their backline is pretty solid. I mean, which is why they were able to like, they got those 4 goals in, but it was because they were going forward, and then they had uh, uh, Alyssa Chapman got the red card early on in the first half, so or early on in the second half. So um, that just kind of played a big role into how they how the match ended. But overall, it was a great game. I think that's what we want. That's what we're expecting from the NWSL now. Is that they because it got so competitive over the summer. That's why they brought it back. CBS has the rights. Twitch, if you're not
Mhm.
able to see it in CBS for some reason, you can stream it online now. So it's very accessible for you to watch the league now, as opposed to like last year.
Yeah, and you'll actually, speaking of that, the fireworks in that game because there was a red card and everything going in that game. You will get to see the Dash play North Carolina again. They actually are playing here on the 4th of October, so not too far away. We'll see the Dash. It's actually they play in Orlando on the 26th, and they'll play the Courage again back here on the 4th. So you'll get to see them in action. They're playing the same teams, kind of what the MLS is doing in their first phase. They're playing a region, kind of not. They're limiting the amount of traveling around because they'll play, like I said, they'll play North Carolina again. The 9th, they'll be playing the Pride again. And I think they're kind of phasing it in from there. They're kind of more spread out than the MLS is.
Right.
Any other thoughts on the NWSL before we get going into Europe?
I mean, as we know, what's going around on the West Coast has also played an influence as to like why there haven't been teams playing. I mean, we have the Portland and the Seattle Rain not having not played a game yet because of the wildfires that are happening on the West Coast.
Right.
So, I mean, that's also played a big role into the league standings and like why they're also spreading out those matches as well.
Hashtag 2020.
Yeah.
Everything's happening. All right, well, let's switch gears. Let's hop off the continent. Let's go over the Atlantic and let's check things out in Europe. We're going to give a little rundown. We do have soccer back in action. Mostly says I just want to give a quick rundown of each of the leagues, and I know there's a couple things I want to stop on with La Liga, and especially a few things on Premier League. But Richard, feel free to jump in and stop me if there's anything that you like to see. I like to comment on. First league that was back was French League. French League was the first one back. They're already a full 3 games in, and interesting. Your usual guys aren't always there. There was a game today against Marseille and Saint Etienne for first place, and obviously you can see with the 9 points, Saint Etienne is perfect to start. Monaco with a good start, and in Marseille. What you don't see there is you don't see PSG. They're obviously still hungover from Champions League play and not really in action that much. They were in action the other day against Marseille, and it was a straight up brawl. I want to say was it 5 red cards at once, including Neymar? Neymar was just like throwing a fit. You could tell. I don't know about you, but I could tell there's definitely there's naturally going to be frustration at PSG right after being let down again so close again, and with the star power they have. But it's interesting that if they're not careful, that frustration is going to carry over into their next campaign because you could tell there was some chemistry and some back and forth between the PSG players. I don't think everything's is wonderful in paradise, so to speak. I am really curious to see what happens in the transfer period with PSG because I think that there's some egos there. I think there's some people who want to make moves, and I think that their time to win it was this year. It was their
Yeah,
time, and it didn't happen. So,
right.
um, Joe said about Neymar, did we hear about the racism allegations? Yeah, and it's something that I'm telling you what we've seen in our sports world and here in the United States. Like I said, we've talked. I'm glad you said that, Joe. We've talked about it before. The issues of racism in the European leagues, it's an issue, and it's been overlooked. If the amount of the racism that takes place in European soccer in some of those leagues occurred here, you'd see it on the front page of every paper and every news story. It's just been, unfortunately, more socially accepted. It's a shame. So, yeah, it's an issue. Any thoughts on France and on PSG and kind of that whole mix up going on over there?
Right. I mean that was the one that happened recently on Sunday with Marseille, and
Yeah,
I think like that's what damages the game itself. I think like putting against separating the competitiveness of the sport, like with something like this, like it's I think it kind of gets you thinking like who's on the field and like who's really like being an actual competitive player and who's there to be a douchebag essentially, you know, like
yeah.
sure, like Neymar or whatever, like he may not be the greatest soccer player or he may think or this and that, but like not discrediting him or not like, you know, like getting him so ticked off to that point where you have to resource to being a racist or making racist like comments to him uh just on a game. Like I think
And that whole thing, the game was over. The game was
yeah,
freaking over. You lost. Marseille got the win. I mean, all these. You look at the official booking times: 90 plus 7, 90 plus 7. Neymar 90 plus 9. I'm like, the game is freaking over. Like it just. That's what makes me so mad is when that stuff happens
yeah,
at the end like that. It's like, guys, you had a bad game, move on, but then you have to
right,
let it get into something so ugly, and like you said, then it gets thrown to the extreme, and it gets even more out of control.
right.
But we'll see how. Let me pull up the schedule. So if you guys are fans of the French league, I said a couple matches I would keep an eye on. Is PSG is actually going to be is in playing Nice coming up, and they're actually up one of the rankings, so a critical game for them to bounce back and stay engaged. I'm also curious to see if Monaco's been out of the mix for quite some time, to see if they can mix it back up and get in there.
Well, I'm gonna be hopping on the Saint Etienne
On
bandwagon.
that train
So
already. It
yeah.
starts now. What do y'all think about Messi's transfer? Was it all just a ploy to distract from a goal loss to Bayern? I haven't thought about that angle, Joe, but that's actually that's interesting. You know, I think he really did want to leave, but I think that Barcelona just basically was like, with that whole lowering the hammer, it's like, nope, rejected. And it's kind of funny how you see him now. It kind of humbled Messi, I think, a little bit, because it's like, you really don't have complete control over this. Whoever's paying you $300 million, can kind of decide what happens. But I think it backfired because of the several guys who are leaving. Suarez, being linked to the move to Juventus to join Ronaldo of all people. It's interesting. So, uh,
Everybody in the world has been wanting to see Messi and Ronaldo play, and it seems like there's always one player who gets to play with him closer and closer.
yeah,
Yeah, but yes, in terms of like the French league, like I am going to be hopping on that Saint Etienne train, but I like you said, Monaco is one of those teams who I guess like needs to pick up some slack because they haven't. I think they've lost their like international name in terms of like
right.
being a competitive team. Sure, they have the history, but like how much can you depend on that? Again, we've seen Marseille, Montpellier, uh, the Lille, and of course Olympique Lyon. So they have a lot of stake here in the U.S. as well with the women's teams on both the French side and the Rain FC team. So it's going to be nice to see those interactions now with the U.S. and women's leagues in both the European side and the American side. With kind of stepping in over there.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. And we're going to see here, since Joe's been commenting so much tonight, I just sent Joe an invite. We'll see if Joe can join us in the studio. So, Joe, if you're watching, check your phone. I just texted you a link to see if you can join and talk us a little Euro soccer with us. I think you like this stuff. We'll come back. Let's talk about Messi because he brought up Messi. So let's get into La Liga. Let's switch gears. Looking at La Liga, this is the only time that you're going to look at the rankings and you're going to see this. Valencia, your top four: Valencia, Granada, Osasuna, Real Betis, Huesca, Real Sociedad, Valladolid, and Villarreal. Why? Because guess who hasn't played yet? Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, Sevilla. So they started last week, but not the entire league. So, interesting. We'll see this weekend. Those teams in action. I'm really curious to see what Barcelona looks like coming out. Just because, all these teams really, Real Madrid, because we haven't, since the letdowns in the Champions League, there's been a lot of movement. There's going to be, I think, even more transfers and movement going on. Obviously, these rankings aren't going to stay like this. I get that, but I'm curious to see if there is any movement in terms of those big four, the power four: Sevilla, Atletico, Real, Barcelona. It's an interesting time. I've said this before. Sevilla, Atletico, wake the hell up. This is your chance. This is your chance. But they always let me down. So
Right.
what are your thoughts? Let's start with, Real Madrid's not as in much of a situation because we'll talk about Gareth Bale going to the Premier League. But Barcelona, like I said, starting with this whole Messi thing and having this group of amazing players, but can they keep it together? As Joe points out, Messi's getting much older. Is he getting near his prime? They decided to hold him. What do you think's going on in Camp Nou, and what's going to happen this season?
Yeah, man. I think for me, it's the fact that like La Liga has, in my opinion, has lost its like star power. Like the reason why people watched La Liga just even 3-4 years ago was because it was Messi and Ronaldo. Sure, you had Griezmann, you had Carlos Vela at one point, but the attractive power of Real Madrid versus Barcelona was at its highest at that point. Now, I'm not as interested to watch this Clásico, right?
It's lost a little bit of its grandeur, if you will, a little bit of its. So, we got Joe on here. Let's get Joe in the stream here. This is the first because Raul left and lost the streak.
We're going rogue.
We're going rogue. We're bringing in a new guy. Welcome to the program. Another former player of mine and Texas Soccer Live fan from episode 1. It's that boy, Broke Boy Joe. What's up, Broke Boy Joe?
Yeah, what's up? How's it going, everybody? Just chilling here, Glad to be back home in Houston. Glad to be a part of the show again. It's a privilege, and it's always fun chatting it up with you guys over soccer and stuff. So thank you for having me on. It's
probably what your third time now being on. I know you're on for a couple episodes about a year ago, but well, man, I saw you were commenting. I wanted to get you on because I know you follow a lot of European soccer and what's going on with a lot of these stars. Jump right in what we're talking about. What are your thoughts on the whole Barcelona circus?
Honestly, so it's just, I don't know. Are we still talking about the Messi thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like that defeat to Bayern was just terrible. I remember that day because I was working with my grandparents and my cousin was like, yo, Barcelona was losing to Bayern 4 to I think it was 1 at the moment. And I was like, that's crazy. Like that's unheard of. Whenever you're talking about like these big name teams, there will be games where they go 4-3, 5-4, whatever, but you never hear of a team blowing a team out by 3 goals, which if you play soccer, 3 goals is a pretty significant lead to be had. And so it's just like, I was like, that was crazy. And then I get home just to hear like all on my Facebook news feed and everything, just like Barcelona gets destroyed by Bayern. And it's just like, but like all props to Bayern. They have an amazing team, an amazing academy, amazing trainers. a lot of the memes that were blowing up was like about how Bayern has transformed players from like these very talented but much smaller players to like these big frame powerhouse athletes, and it's just like really amazing to see. So it was crazy.
I always wonder. I wonder, like, because all the other Barcelona players are so tight-lipped. I wonder, like, if they're being real, being honest. I wonder how some of these other Barcelona players feel about this whole thing. Because like Messi didn't get his way, so now he's there. I mean, you see Suarez, who's like, do you think Suarez's move? Do you think it was really just because he wanted to change and he wanted to go play? He wants to go play with Ronaldo and Vinicius, or I mean, come on, it has to be. He had to feel some type of way after it's like, oh, okay, Messi, it's all about you, or not even towards him, but towards the team. Remember, at one point, the team said after that loss, we're blowing it up. The only guys that are safe are like Messi, De Jong, and like two other guys that they randomly picked. Suarez wasn't on that list. None of the defense was on that list. So I wonder if those guys. I wonder if that's going to backfire at the management in Barcelona, because I think a lot of those guys, quite frankly, I think they want out. I think they're done.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the problems come from like the management and stuff, and a lot of the players. You always hear the complaints about the managers and the coaches and how terrible it's been. Like the last time I remember at least some decent word of the coaching and the manager staff was like with Pep Guardiola. That was so long ago, and
Yeah.
Barcelona has just had like. I was talking to a friend the other day about how like Barcelona to me has turned into like what Real Madrid used to be, and where they just buy star players and put them in the front, and they haven't developed their defense at all. I mean, they still have, like, no disrespect to PK, he's a great fucking defender, but wait, can we curse him?
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
So he's a great defender and all, but like, I mean, they brought players in like Umtiti and like De Jong and stuff like that, and I'm a little outdated in terms of who Barcelona has exactly, but from what I've heard, like they lack the defense, they lack in the midfield, and all they've been worrying about is Messi and this and that. And I'm a big fan of Messi. I don't like to think that he's a very like entitled feeling individual, but that move was something else. It brought out a lot of drama that I think has been like residing within Barcelona.
Another question I like to ask, and if Richard, if y'all, I'm asking this to both of y'all. I ask this every year. Can Atletico Madrid and Sevilla, can they find either one of those teams? Because they're like the perennial third place, third wheelers, man. Can they? Do you think we have an opportunity to finally see a team other than Barca and Real do something? I mean, every year I say, oh, well, this could be the year Sevilla and Atletico could actually challenge them. And I'm saying that again because of all the drama that Barcelona is going to beat themselves. But I'm just, I wonder, do you think that there were ever, I mean, I feel like every year we're getting closer and closer to finally seeing that era, right? That era of dominance by those two teams come to an end. But every year when I think it's going to happen, nope, they end up dominating again.
Right. I mean, well, one, hey, Joe. But the second thing in regards to that, it's this time it's like, what is going to be the excuse for these teams? Like we're saying here, like, on one hand, you have Barcelona with their drama on Messi, and I think on that, they should have learned from the Argentina national team that you can't depend on creating a team for Messi. It has to be a solid team where you have multiple players on both the back, the middle, and the forward for that to work. But on the Real Madrid side, you're losing star power, but you're having youth players who are still trying to learn their ways and figure out how to play, but they're still Real Madrid. This should be the year. I would say. I would dare to say like Atletico Madrid has already done it before, like 10 years ago, right? So they know what it takes to beat them, and as long as you beat these two teams and when you face them in both matches, you're set.
You're set.
Like all you got to do is not lose to the bottom 3-5 teams. Like that's all you really have to do, and then that was what happened this past year. They were losing to the teams who are at the bottom half of the table.
Yeah. Like I said, yeah. In other words, the teams that are currently enjoyed Valencia. This is the only week you'll be number one. It's these teams that there's so much parity in that league, and which kind of transitions to what I want to talk about next. Going into a league that I think is very competitive and not extreme, the Premier League, and ending with Gareth, the big move. Gareth Bale finally completed his physical today. We know how unhappy he's been at Real Madrid and unused. He's going to be a Spur. He's playing with Tottenham. So, Premier League kicked off week 1. We got week 2. There are 4 teams that did not play. Neither one of the Manchester teams played. Man City, Man U did not play. Aston Villa, who's up in the first division now, and Burnley did not play. A couple highlights from week 1. The shocker, Liverpool almost getting upset on week 1 by the newest member of the Premier League. 19 years since they've been back. Leeds United took them to the brink. Ended up Liverpool pulled out 4-3 behind a hat trick by Mo Salah, who I think is, talk about who I don't think he gets enough credit. People don't talk about Mo Salah enough. Also interesting week 1, you had the winners of week 1, Leicester City, the Wolves, Chelsea, Everton, Newcastle, Crystal Palace, and Arsenal actually coming out with a 3-0 win. And then Man U will start off this week against Crystal Palace on Saturday, and we will see Man City against the Wolves, a very good Wolves team that's come along all of a sudden on there. I don't know how much you guys keep up, and Joe, I know I brought you in on here unexpectedly. Any thoughts on the Premier League or any of these teams? I'm just going to open it up. Anything Premier League related or any of the players, or we can start with, is Gareth Bale going to actually make a difference now that he's back in the Premier League now with Tottenham? Or what do you think about the player?
I definitely think I know there's been a lot of frustration with like Gareth Bale and Real Madrid, so I think getting that weight and stress off of his shoulders is going to allow him to play more of his own game. And since like he's been like he started off with Tottenham and stuff like that, and that's where he was founded by Real Madrid and whatnot. I think going back to where I don't know exactly which team was his first team, but going back to those roots at least of where he started to become the prime physical athlete that he is or that he was is like a good step for him to get back to where he wants to be and where he needs to be. And then the Premier League, a lot of people I feel know that the Premier League is one of the very most competitive leagues, so it's going to be lots of fun for him to go back there and get some good competition rather than just running it the whole season. So, yeah,
he was with Tottenham from 2007 to 2013 before making the move over to Real Madrid. Before that, he played a season with Southampton, was where he was at briefly before Tottenham picked him up. So, it'll be interesting to see him back in the Premier League. That seems to be the move, right? I mean, we heard all the rumors about Messi and linking up with Pep and Man City. Hats off to the Premier League. It's how they're staying relevant. They are a solid league from top to bottom.
Yeah. It's the best league in the world. Like I've said this before, it's the best league in the world in terms of competitiveness. They all around calendar year they play. Yeah. Like I think they only have like probably that Christmas week, and that's it.
I would highly recommend to someone, if someone's not like, hey, I'm just getting into kind of watching soccer and whatnot, and like I said, you want to just pick a Saturday, turn on any number of the I don't care who's playing, freaking, Southampton versus Aston Villa or some crap. It's going to be better than anything else you're really seeing in most leagues. So let's just for time's sake, we're going to keep moving along because I want to get to our final topic because I'm interested. We have Joe in here for a little Liga MX talk. Real quick note, I put down here, Serie A and Bundesliga start this week. Serie A kicks off on Saturday. Not a lot of big matchups in terms of, two, top teams. Everyone kind of is spread out for the first week, but you will see Juventus in action on Sunday and Roma and Napoli on Saturday as well. Bundesliga kicks off as well. Bayern opens up against Schalke. You see Dortmund against my favorite team to say, Mönchengladbach, and a couple other, interesting first week matchups. But we'll cover a lot more of that on our next show. Let's get to our final topic, Liga MX, the dogfight that it always is. It's interesting. Number one, these two teams, which I'll get into y'all's opinion, but we have Pumas in first place with 22, Cruz Azul also with 22, right at second place, Leon in third with 21, Club America up there with 20, and then I want to talk about that grouping, y'all, because you see three teams now. There's a little bit of separation. You have Pachuca in fifth with 15, Chivas with 15 and 6, Monterrey in seventh with 14, Tigres also with 14, but in eighth. And the reason I mention the next teams is normally, right, in most seasons, that'd be it. But this season, with the revamped playoff model, teams all the way down to 12th place are getting in. So if the playoffs were going to happen today, Juarez would be in with 13 points. Toluca would be in. Querétaro would be in. And Puebla would be in. I think at the bottom right now, if I pull up my standings, I think we have like Necaxa.
Atlas, Mazatlán.
Atlas is actually in 13th. Mazatlan
Yeah.
14th. Tijuana, Santos, Atletico San Luis, and Necaxa sitting down there at the bottom of the league. Okay, before we get into particulars, overall thoughts. We are now 10 games in. We're about to start week 11, so we're getting into the home stretch. We're about 2/3 through. Your thoughts on what we're seeing in Liga MX so far? Let's start with Richard.
Yeah, honestly, I just feel like you can't really count this year for teams, but I have to say this, I'm glad to see that the northern teams are kind of northern, I guess the central part of Mexico. The teams are coming back. Your historical Pumas, Cruz Azul, and America are back in terms of just being on top, right? But can we really count it? Who knows, right? But it's good. It's a good way to see them back. León, I think they kind of steered away from being at the top for a while, and now they have. So it's nice that they were able to make those moves early on, and now it's paying off. So, but Monterrey, Tigres, 7th, 8th place. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter now because, like you said, there is a new structure. So it's more focusing on who is from 5th to 12th place. And
unless you're the top 4, it doesn't matter because the top 4 gets you instantly to that second round. But that's all that matters.
Right. I am surprised to see, Mazatlan is holding in there. They're still holding on to their 10 points. Very disappointing to see Atletico and Necaxa. I think these are two of the teams that I've had high hopes in terms of being up in mid-table. Yeah,
we're not counting this as practice. Practice.
Yeah.
Talking about practice. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Joe, I'll get to the Cruz Azul fan in a second.
Is this the year? No.
Yeah, it's gonna be the year every year. Cruz Azul fan, and you guys got your hopes up. Oh, it's our year. Coronavirus. Oh, it's our year again. 2020. It just Cruz Azul just can't win. Dude, I know you're a fan of them, but for real? Are they for real? Because every year it's we're legit, and then they get cursed. I'm starting to believe Raul. At first, I didn't believe Raul and all his crazy curse ideas in Mexican soccer. I'm starting to believe it. I'm starting to believe it about Cruz Azul because you guys can have the best regular season in the world, and then gone. I mean,
man, if you don't believe in brujeria in Mexico, you're not believing in the right stuff, man. You got to be careful. But man, I'm a big fan of the sport. I appreciate Cruz Azul because that was a team I grew up with around when I was young, and then I'm a big fan of Tigres too. So it's kind of disappointing seeing Tigres down there, but hearing about the new playoff model and stuff like that, it sounds like it's very interesting. But also the corona, the pandemic is just. I mean, what can you really do? What can you really say? 2020 has just kind of been a shit show for everything. So it's really tough, but at least we still get to see some soccer. So
I'll tell you this. I don't know if you guys, at least because we have, obviously a Monterrey fan, we got an America fan, we got a Tigres Cruz Azul fan over here. I think we can all agree the Pumas are not going to win a championship. I'm sorry. They are going to Pumas fans are so, and I'm going to say this, shout out to my barber, Christian, because I hope he's watching right now because he's a Pumas fan. Pumas suck at playoffs. They choke in the most situations. I don't know what it is about that team, man. But this ain't gonna happen. I'll tell you what I'm gonna get y'all's thoughts. Do you think because it's been so tight this year in terms of the standings? Do you think the separation is gonna stand? In other words, if the playoffs for today, Pumas, Cruz Azul, León, Club America have now separated themselves from the pack by 5 points. Do you think that's gonna hold? And if not, which of these teams in kind of that 5 through 9, 5 through 10 territory do you think could sneak into that? Because remember, if you get top 4, you're guaranteed on to the next round. You don't have to play that extra game. Out of Pachuca, Chivas, Monterrey, Tigres, or anyone else, who do you think has the greatest chance of kicking one of those 4 out? Whoever wants to go.
Yeah, I think honestly the next best team is Pachuca and Chivas. I know I'm an America fan, but like I said, I'm not anti-Chivas. We'll
find out this weekend. We'll find out this weekend.
Right, for sure, and then Super Clásico. But still, these are the two teams who have the best possibility Like I said it when Monterrey and America played on the final last winter. Like I think Tigres unfortunately ended their like high streak of the decade, and this is a new decade. So I don't see them like getting onto that top four spot. I still do see them continue to be competitive, but unfortunately, like Tigres hasn't been as like I guess like consistent this tournament, right? But
Well,
again,
Raul's not
pandemic.
here.
Yeah.
Raul's not here, so we can talk crap about Tigres.
Well,
But
no, we have Joe here.
yeah, he's maybe a Tigres fan, but he's not a Libre Loco way, you know. Hey, and by the way, I believe it was about a month ago that my Rayados took a little trip down to Azteca, and what was that? Oh yeah, it was 3-1, I think. So
Yeah.
anybody's beatable.
Right.
Joe, I'm wondering, Raul's opinion, and he would say this on the show. He says Tuca out at Tigres. Get him out. His system's old. We figured it out. It's predictable. He's not playing players right. Would you agree or disagree with there needs to be a change in the style at Tigres?
I don't know anyone brave enough to disagree with Raul's opinion about Tigres and their management and stuff. Like, I mean, I believe it, you know, like, I mean, it happened. You see it happen. These new like systems get put into place, and after a reign of dominance, it gets figured out. And, you know, like even the tiki taka got figured out, and it's still a great form of soccer to play, but, you know, it's not as competitive and viable as it used to be. So, I mean, and that's the question, like, where is soccer going to go to next? What's the next playing style? You know, we have fast players, we have athletic players, we have all these types, which makes soccer more competitive and more fun to watch. So it's like, where do we keep going from here? So, I mean, if Raul says that the management needs to change, I'm not gonna say it doesn't, because it probably does.
Well, you know, the numbers still back up Tigres, and you know they have the leading goal scorer. Gignac has 8 goals over 10 games. Quinones has 4 assists. He's up there tied with a bunch of other people, with 2 other guys, Romo from Azul and Francisca from Puebla, with 4 assists. So they're getting numbers, but they're also giving up a lot of late goals. They've had a lot. They've settled for a lot of 1 points that could have been 3 points.
And red cards.
Yeah, red cards have been bad for them. Same thing with Monterrey. There's been several ties that shouldn't have been ties. As a Rayados fan, trust me, I'm glad that we have forgotten about the fact that we were last place back in May. But it's interesting. I still think there's going to be an interesting fight. Now, last question before we kind of look at the games to watch this week. If we look at the end of the standings, I'm going to give it to you. Puebla's that last team in at 12. So let's look at those next 4 teams. Well, actually, those bottom 6 teams. Out of these 6 teams, who do you think has the greatest shot of sneaking in and knocking out maybe a Puebla or knocking out Querétaro or Toluca? You have, in order, number 13, Atlas, Mazatlan, Tijuana, Santos, Atletico San Luis, and Necaxa. Who do you think? I'm going to tell you right now who I'm going with, and I'm going to go with the dark horse here. I'm going to go with whatever the hell their mascot is. I don't know, but I'm going with Mazatlan with their weird-ass dolphin, weird deer crest, whatever the heck it is. I'm going with Sinaloa on this one. So Mazatlan, I think, is my pick. What do y'all think?
So I'm looking at who's playing who, because that's essentially what matters.
Yeah.
Like,
It comes down to matchup.
7. So Atlas has a really tough road as he's playing most of the top teams for this next round. I mean, again, you can beat anybody. So they're the closest ones to get there. All they need to do is even out the differential between Puebla and they're in, and so is Mazatlan and Tijuana. Again, dark horse. Like, it's very unfortunate to see Santos all the way down there, but it's another year and they're down there again. So I don't believe Santos will get in, and San Luis and Necaxa are probably my only hope. But it seems like Necaxa is probably the one who the only one they're gonna play who's on the top is Pumas, and that's about it. Everybody else it's even out in that orange line.
Well, this week they'll get to play Puebla, who's in that 12th spot. So if they're for real, it starts this week. Yeah. Joe, any thoughts on someone who could sneak in?
Yeah, no, I don't really have any thoughts, to be honest. I think this might be it. I think definitely to watch is going to be the playoffs, because, like you talk about like a team like Pumas being up top at number 1 and stuff, but playoffs it's a whole entire different mentality from the season. That's why some good teams have bad seasons, and if they make it into the playoffs, they turn it around completely. It's all about that, quote unquote championship mentality. But as corny as it is, it's partially true. You got to be able to have the mental fortitude to get through in those higher levels of gameplay. So
yeah, and it's I think it's gonna be interesting seeing the dynamic of this extra round of games, this play-in. With 5 is going to play 12, and so for example, like today, you would see, if it happened today, you would see Chivas and Querétaro, you would see Pachuca and Puebla, you would see Monterrey, Toluca, you see Tigres, Juarez. It'd be interesting to see if that extra game has any impact, and if it actually gives an advantage or a disadvantage to those 4 teams who are sitting out there and resting. Does the rest help them? Does it make them rusty? So there's a whole different dynamic now of seeing what that kind of play-in does. I think it makes it exciting because we all know in Mexican soccer in the playoffs, we've seen plenty of times a low seed come and win it all. We talk about the curse of first place. So many first place getting knocked out. The fact that there's even a possibility that a team like Puebla or Querétaro could actually be mixing it up in the playoffs, I think it'd be cool because you'll get to see some teams that haven't been in the playoffs in a long time. You'll get to see them in a playoff environment. So it'd be interesting to see if they keep it after this season. I think they'll keep it for Clausura, but it'd be interesting to see if they keep that going. So yeah. So coming up this week, and it's our last kind of thing before we wrap things up. A couple matchups. As I said, the big matchup this week, we have America and Chivas facing off in a matchup. I think is it in Mexico City? I didn't check.
It's in Estadio Azteca.
Mm-hmm. Some key matchups, I think, for both Monterrey and Tigres, playing Querétaro and San Luis, 2 teams that are right behind them. But also it sets up Clásico Regia is week 12. So I think it's going to be very interesting if Tigres and Monterrey, they both are going to want momentum going into Clásico week. And that's going to make Clásico huge because if they both win here and stay up there, that game, that week, that match day 12 is going to be there's going to be some stuff on the line there between those 2 teams. And so that's going to make that more fun to watch. And if you're rooting against Cruz Azul, you got to hope that Mazatlan starts winning this weekend because that's who you got playing them. Last key matchup is not till Monday night. You're going to see number 1 Pumas taking on number 3 León. So we'll see if both those teams are for real 2 top teams facing off against each other. So that's about it. We've hit our normal about hour. Before I start winding things down, big thank you to Joe. All of a sudden, not expecting it, but hopping in with us to talk a little soccer. It was great to have you back on. Someone did ask in the comments what happened to my boy Raul. I just said he took care of some business. That's all. Whatever you want to interpret from that. And yeah, so guys, we'll come back. We're gonna be back in March. We'll probably have 3 of us. If Joe's actually around, maybe Joe will become a semi-regular. We'll see. Maybe Joe can join us for a segment down in the future. If you're down, man, we'd love to have you hop on with Raul, and it's always fun if we can get someone on the show who can rile up Raul, because if you can get him going, then it's always entertaining. So yeah, man. So appreciate you joining us. It's always fun. And before we close it out, any final thoughts? Or we didn't get to see how things are going with you, Joe. But any final thoughts or things that you're looking forward to in the world of soccer or 2020 period?
Yeah, man. I'm just looking forward to getting this whole stuff over with to see some more seriousness in the field again. So, but thank you guys so much for having me on, letting me just come on. It was lots of fun catching up and talking soccer. Definitely going to freshen up for the next time. I'm a little dated since I haven't been able to watch anything, but yeah, it's lots of fun.
It's all good. Richard, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, so some of you, if you haven't checked this out on Twitter and Facebook, there's more activity going on the women's soccer. Again, with the Liga MX Femenil, they're also getting those high numbers up there. Like, it's so amazing. Like, on the women's side, like, yes, America, they have their own women's team, but like the Rayadas and the Tigres, like Katy Martinez is almost getting up to that 8 goals. She's up in 6 goals as like the goal leader. is someone from Chivas. But like all of these teams are scoring amazing goals, and so I try to shine them on our Facebook page and on Twitter. So if you want to catch those recaps, you can also look them up on YouTube. But I'm sharing them on our pages because like you can't really miss those. Like these are amazing goals that just needed to be highlighted. So it's amazing that they were able to start their league again, just like the men. So if you haven't seen Liga MX Femenil, it's probably streaming live on Facebook. There are a couple matches going on tonight. So I'll just do a little quick plug for them. So Tigres and Atlético San Luis are playing at right now. You have Chivas and Cruz Azul and Pachuca and Pumas. The leaders on the table right there would be let's see. You have Monterrey number 1, America number 2, Guadalajara number 3, and Tigres number 4. These are your usual 4 big players, just like on the men's side. Also on the women's side, they're also the big 4 teams. But then you have on 5th and 6th place, you have Atlas and Pumas. So not only Pumas on the men's side are doing pretty good, but I would dare to say that Pumas on the women's side are also doing pretty good too. And Atlas is like a big powerhouse over on the women's side. So it'd be nice to see Atlas kind of sneak in on the men's side to kind of like keep the momentum for both teams.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, and my plug before we go is just Dynamo back in action this Saturday. We finally saw some wins. We have a team. It's a team on the move. The youth
Who loves
movement.
to play.
You know what's up?
Yeah, it's a team who loves to play soccer.
They love to play. The chemistry's good. I really am excited to see if this new Argentinian coming up, if that signing makes a difference. But I do think there's some cohesion going on. So they have none other than Minnesota this Saturday at home at BVA Compass, and there will be some fans in the upper deck. They're actually allowed back at the stadium for the first time. So we'll see how that goes. We'll come back to you live in about a month. In October, we'll be down to the playoff preview for Liga MX. We'll be a couple weeks into all the European seasons, and the MLS season will be on its last month or so if we come back to you later in October, with the playoffs happening, I think at this point in mid-November. So as always, for Tech Soccer Live, I'm Sean Telez with Richard Romero and special guest today, Joseph Cardosa. We are out. Let me get us going here. I think I'm going. Hang on. And our own theme music. This is Joe. This is custom to us. Nobody. I had this done by HSPVA students.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I'll let it play for a minute, then I'll turn it off.
All right, guys. It was lots of fun. Thanks for having me.
Joe,
All right.
take care, my friend. Okay.
All right, I'll take care.
Season 4. It's been a rogue year.